you're looking at a historic cemetery. There aren't that many that are this old, at this well-preserved state, and any of the stones that are broken can be replaced. There's quite a few of them you can see that look like they've been tipped over, gone, stolen.
In my office, I was approached by Kathy Lucero, Bob McGuire, and Sheila McEnlenny. They tag-teamed me basically, and talking about the importance of the project. The Historical Society's done a lot of great things for the city, raising the awareness of history and the importance of history, and really the great historical qualities the city of Woburn has, and they've done a great job, of course, of bringing that to the forefront. And I thought this would be another great project for the city, being one of the oldest cemeteries in the country.
These are the original founders of our city and fought in the wars for our city. I think we have an obligation to restore this to a respectable state and to recognize so that the citizens of the city can come and visit and get a sense of the history.
This cemetery and the second burial ground show our history, our colonial history. And it is very important for our young people to understand our contribution in Massachusetts Bay Colony history. We should be very proud of our Revolutionary War history, which there are over 15 buried here, Revolutionary War soldiers. Second burial has over 55. So we are very proud that we have made the first steps, and I'm very proud personally as part of the Historical Society to educate Woburn and our community on what we have and should be very proud of. So in 2015, actually in 2014 in the fall, we sat down with the mayor, we had a meeting, we had the Cemetery Commission members, Catherine Shaughnessy and John Sawyer, and also our engineering department, because they also have records of this cemetery, and as far as coordinates and the landmass and the markers around this area of Woburn. So when we did that, Bob McGuire and myself, we presented our concerns that we had a 5-point plan of preservation, starting with, let's say, what are the parameters of the cemetery? Where are the boundaries of the cemetery? Let's start with that. Because over these generations, many stones are either not here because they didn't have them. That doesn't mean there aren't graves here, or they have been destroyed, the markers have been destroyed. We realized that the cemetery was really in disrepair. And it's been like this for generations. It's not just recent. The generations of just time, vandalism, and the wear and tear of these stones has made it look at what it is today. This cemetery is, I believe, 1.4 acres. And so it was, as I said, an open meadow, an open field. And if you notice the cemetery, the gravestones are not symmetrical like you will find in the second burial ground or in later generations. They actually would just, if you died, you would just be brought into the meadow and you would be buried on the same day. We thought it was very important that we look into the new technology. I found that GPR, ground penetrating radar, was available and being used by many colleges, police departments, archaeologists, and other folks that have gone to their cemeteries, such as Sudbury, the town of Sudbury. I came across Bob Perry, who owns Topographix, and what it is a GPR system where he concentrates on burial grounds, and it is a non-invasive search for anomalies in the ground, and it works in a grid pattern, and that's what Bob Perry and Jesse Perry, when they came to Woburn, that's how they would eventually do our search in our first and second burial grounds.
As we're looking at the screen here, when you go across the top of it, this is the length of it as we're going across the top. And this is the depth. These are anomalies that you see here, hyperbolases. And what happens is that as the radar is going across the ground, it's hitting the bottom of the grave, it's coming up like this, and going back down the other side. And that's where you get these hyperbolases. Depending on the strength of it will determine what kind of a grave it is or where it is. When you start seeing little dig marks, like little V shapes up on the top here, that's all roots. That would be roots. So this is a burial right in here, and this is the burial right in here. And notice how notice if you look at the level, you see it's in about the 3 foot to 4 foot range, and that's just about where all these burials are located. Now this one here is also a burial, but this is probably just they caught just part of it, and it's not like if you have a grave, say it's 8 feet long, This is probably catching. Maybe a foot and a half into the grave, to the perpendicular wise into the grave. Here it may be just catching the foot part of it.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's why it's so. That's why it's.
So what about what's down here?
This is also part of graves as well.
Okay.
This right in here. This is probably packed soil, but that could be a rock or a burial,
Okay, I
and that
see.
spot right there. See how heavy that is.
Yep.
So this is the depth, and this is the length as you're walking across. Now this blue point you see here in the center, that's where the grave is. I mean, that's where that's where the scan line is. Now we can determine the scan line. All we have to do is back up the unit. Now as I back it up, you're going to see a line coming into it. So if we back it up, if you can see a line coming down. Cursor. Now if you look right here, you'll see that right here? This is the cursor.
Oh,
see
yeah,
how
yeah.
see how it's coming? See how it's moving back now? That's the cursor that you see right here. That's the cursor.
Yes. Okay.
And as we're backing up, now I'm going to back it up right to the middle of that anomaly. Okay. See, it's right on the center of that line.
Yes.
That right tells me that where that blue mark's at, that grave is right below us. And what controls this line right here, that line we just going through the grave, what controls that and the depth is this wheel that you see right here. This is your tracking wheel. And that's what controls
I see.
the unit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very interesting.
And that's what you're looking at right here. This could be, like I said, compact soil. This could be a rock or a grave. But this is, see the difference between this one here and this one?
Yep.
This one is more classic or more characteristic of a burial, unmarked grave. I mean, a burial. Here is really pronounced really hard. So that really could be a rock. Probably
Okay.
a rock. It's really pronounced. I mean, if anything, if I was in like a Revolutionary War cemetery, I would probably say that was a steel casket because of the pronunciation of how that looks. It's so solid. I mean, the distance between, see how thick those lines are there and
Yes.
up there?
Yep.
That tells me that's probably a rock, versus a burial. But we would take this, now to confirm something like that, just to give you an idea, we would take the scan. Now this goes perpendicular. We even though we're running parallel with the headstones,
Yep.
we're running perpendicular to the grave. So a lot of times what we'll do to figure out the length of it, we'll take this and we'll take it and go this way.
We'll go the other way. Yeah.
Okay, there it is, popped up right now, so you can see it right there. See it?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
See? So what we'll, now that is this, but we scan parallel with the
Right,
with the
right.
grave. Now you can tell. Now right now, see that line is backing up. See the line is right there. See the line right there.
Yes.
That tells me that's the end of the burial. And as I back it up, when I start hit that peak, what I just did, like right there, the beginning is right. The beginning is right here where you see that line. That
Yes.
anomaly. And now as I push it, what it's doing is scanning the length of it. And where it drops off, right there, you see at the very end, that's the end of the burial. So in our situation, what we will do is that we will take it and basically flag it right center in the middle of the grave. So that tells us we get the headstone, we get the GPR unit, and we get the center of the grave. That's what it would be.
When they did this ground penetrating radar, they put their markers in with flags, and you'll see multiple flags, and they put one color down for finding an anomaly, and then when they go back in their grid pattern, they will cross it a different way, and therefore they put a green flag down, which means that's a confirmed anomaly. When they were finished, they came across 206 unmarked anomalies, and they also found 20 stones that were buried maybe 2 or 3 inches down, which we're hoping that with city efforts we'll bring those stones up so we will know whose stones and whose burials are there. On the first day, we realized that we needed to put some sort of security at the second burial ground, and with the aid of the city's help, they put in a new white fence along the High Street area in Buell's Place, because we were finding that children would come in and play, animals would come in, and the stones were really getting damaged, and the grounds, it's just another form of protection. So that went up right away, and that was a great help for Bob and Jesse Perry to do their work. Now on the first burial ground, it was even a bigger surprise. This actually is a more difficult cemetery to do GPR because of the layout of the stones. But upon completion, I cannot even tell you, when I came here, I believe it was like the second day, and I saw maybe 100 flags. I was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this. So by the end of the 2-week period that it took to do just the first burial ground, there were 461 flags that were here in this burial ground, and they indicated anomalies of burials. We were thrilled because it showed that our earliest founders, where you would not have a stone or any surviving wooden marker, did show that these graves were here, these burials are here. So we're quite proud of it. The other thing that they found, and I wanted to mention, is that we do have a walkway that when you come up here, I believe it was put in maybe in 1976, and the walkway we have discovered with the ground penetrating radar, there are 6 burials under this walkway. And of course, because the technology wasn't there when it was put in, you would not know that. So we have to make a decision, obviously, what to do about that in this burial ground. If you remember the First Congregational Church as a slave or a servant for life, you also could be buried in the church cemetery. But usually it was on the outside, on the edges of the cemetery boundaries. So when Bob Perry and Jesse did the GPR here, I was hoping that we would find, burials or anomalies in that area. And in this cemetery, it basically is up here on the hill. He found 16 burials up on that edge, and I was very, very excited. It doesn't confirm because you don't know who's buried there, but the social history at that time, there's a very good chance, because in Woburn there were 8 servants or slaves that died between 1687 and 1700. So I was very thrilled. I think that was my biggest excitement, that we did find separate burials away from the main body of burials that are here. And I'm hoping that special recognition and markers are put on those graves along the fence at the very top. We would like to have the preservation of these stones, which is another step. And in some way, we would like to mark the graves of the 461 Woburn citizens who are not marked now. We would like to have a program in the future to mark their burials, so that when you come in here, you see that all of these graves have been marked, and the recognition of their service and their history in Woburn is recorded, and visually you can see it.
I think it's important that we do what we can to, this ground penetrating radar, they've found some unmarked graves. We want to recognize that we have a grave there, and we want the citizens of Woburn to be able to come and visit and show respect.
As you know, Brian, we have a lot of history here, and it's really been pushed to the forefront by people like Kathy Lucero, John McElhenney, Bob McGuire, and the Historical Society, all the members down there. I don't want to shortchange anything, but they really do a great job. And again, history is a real important thing. It's part of our past, and you really have an obligation to take care of it, make sure that you perpetuate it for generations to come.
As from the historical perspective and being in the Historical Society, I was thrilled for this accomplishment. It does mean a lot to the city of Woburn to know where you came from, to know what we have, and we need to preserve it. It really is a civic responsibility of a town or a city to preserve its past. And with Woburn having one of the oldest colonial histories in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, I am very pleased that the Cemetery Commission and the Mayor Galvin and city officials did agree that we would go forward with this project.
Well, it was done with traditional survey equipment, total station, locating every single stone, and what they use is a GPS-based coordinate system, which is a latitude and a longitude. It actually fits exactly where it is on the face of the earth, so that these positions are preserved forever. So should a stone get lost or broken, it can be replaced based on those coordinates.